Financial Bloodbath 2025. Is Tesla just the first sacrifice? Soros Financial Massacre 2025. You can laugh at Warren Buffett for selling US stocks and missing the internet stock boom in 2000 and the AI stock surge last year. But there is only one person who cannot be underestimated. From 1997 to now is 28 years. This person has been waiting all this time when it seemed like the whole world had forgotten him. He still hadn't put down his hunting rifle. He always lies in wait for his prey to appear, waiting for the right moment to squeeze the grass. Because if you shoot too early, the prey will be scared away. All efforts will be wasted. And now, after years of waiting, he finally fired. What does this mean? It represents a death certificate. Carefully calculated. If you are not yet aware of the severity of the consequences. If you are still blindly buying any US assets, whether stocks, bonds or even just holding US dollars, you are going against the financial crisis. You are confronting the market manipulation hand. You are going against the manipulation organization led by Soros. In other words, you'll see, Soros has his sights set on Elon Musk. This time, fortune-telling welcomes you all. Tesla shares owned by Musk have recently been viciously shorted and have plunged as much as 55%. What is short selling? It's simple. Normally, when we buy stocks, we buy low and sell high to make a profit. Right short selling does the opposite. For example, you just bought Tesla stock for $100. So now you are holding $100 worth of Tesla stock. I want to short. So I borrowed Tesla stock from you and sell it right on the market for $100. So I no longer have Tesla stock. But I do have $100 in cash. When Tesla stock dropped to $50, I bought it back. Now I have Tesla stock back and $50 profit left. Then I return the stock to you plus $5 profit and I still make $45. So short selling is a way to sell first and buy back after the price drops to make a profit. If the stock increases, you lose. If it doesn't increase, you also lose because you still have to pay interest to the person who lent you the stock. That's how we small traders short. So why did Elon Musk recently have to speak up and say that the reason Tesla's stock price fell so dramatically was because the Soros-led manipulation group was intentionally short selling? What does it mean? First, Soros manipulates people's hearts. In his hands is the control of many media channels. So in just a few short days, 47 reputable media outlets released more than 3,000 negative news stories about Tesla worldwide. For example, Tesla sales in Germany dropped 70% and sales in China and Europe also fell by half. You just need to wake up. Open your phone if you pay any attention to the stock market. Is to see a flood of bad news about Tesla. In just 1 week, the panic selling sent Tesla shares soaring 178%. So what is manipulating people's hearts? Very simple. Through the media. Through the news. Infiltrate people's hearts. Break the trust in Tesla. But that is not enough. Because people need to see some facts with their own eyes to fully believe. So step 2. When Tesla's stock price rose to its highest level, Soros immediately took action. He bought a large amount of shares. Then he started selling them. The sell-off accounted for 18% of Tesla's outstanding shares. Simply put, it's like he bought all of the Tesla shares from the 18% of holders and then continuously sold them to push the price down. What if you don't buy enough shares? Then you lend me? I will push the stock price down and pay you back. Don't you want to lend it? It's okay. I won't borrow from you either. Actually, I borrow from your brokerage firm or bank. Because when you buy Tesla shares, the shares are not actually in your hands, but in the hands of a securities company or bank. Therefore I just need to borrow from them. When you see the Tesla stock you bought is being marked down and the price keeps falling, you will have to think about whether to sell to cut your losses or not. It's okay if you don't sell. Because even if you don't sell, someone else will. The more people sell, the lower the price. Soros also continued to sell. If you don't sell, the stock will continue to fall in price until you are forced to sell. If you still don't sell. Okay. Step 3. Physical attack. Dozens of Tesla stores had their windows smashed for no reason. And Tesla's charging stations were also vandalized. So what else can Tesla do business? If Tesla went out of business, would you still want to hold its stock? But that's not enough. Step 4. See off the guests. When Elon Musk bought Twitter, He mortgaged 63% of Tesla shares to the bank to borrow money to buy Twitter. If Musk sold all those shares at that time, Tesla would collapse and he would lose control of the company. So he could only mortgage those shares to get money. But now that Tesla's stock has fallen dramatically, the value of the shares that Musk pledged to the bank will also decrease. For example, at first you mortgaged stocks worth $1.100 billion. The bank lent you $800 billion. But now the stock price has dropped. Those shares are only worth $800 billion. The bank has lent you the exact current value of the collateral. If the stock continues to fall to $700 billion, the bank will lose. Therefore, they will immediately stop lending and ask you to pay back the entire $800 billion borrowed. If you can't pay, the bank will sell the shares to the market to recover the loan. So once Tesla's stock price hits the bank's red line and Musk can't repay the loan, the Tesla shares pledged will be immediately liquidated. And then Soros's manipulating organization can buy back those shares at the cheapest price and return them to the people from whom they borrowed the shares earlier. If you think this is just a personal conflict between Musk and Soros, look again. The US stock market also plummeted. Do you think, if Trump is elected and Musk is such a big figure but the stock price still falls to this level, will other stocks escape the same fate? This is a message that Soros, who is not easy to act in normal times, has really acted this time. And he's not just targeting Tesla. I tell you, this is just the opening shot of a carefully planned financial massacre. You will notice that this time Soros's heist plan bears a striking resemblance to the 1992 Bank of England crash and the 1997 Asian currency rout. The only difference is that this time his target is no longer other countries, but America itself. At this point, you might be laughing at how anyone would dare short America. But I will smile back at you. Because the 2008 financial crisis also started in the US. By then, America was basically bankrupt and banks were collapsing. But why is America still doing well today? Because the explosion site was indeed in America. But the dead person was not American. The world is the one who suffers the consequences. The price is not paid by Americans but by the world. And if you don't want to be a victim of this crisis, even hope to be able to jump up the social ladder, you can subscribe to my channel, because I will continue to provide you with more information in the future. If you're afraid that you'll forget about it after listening, which is a waste of time, you can like this video to automatically save it to your playlist, allowing you to come back to it at any time to continue watching and taking action. First, even the US Federal Reserve, the monetary policy agency, has been losing money consistently over the past few years. The US government is out of money and has no more money to spend. No one buys US government bonds. No one wants to lend money to the US anymore. In addition, the US stock bubble that was once inflated by AI is now also plummeting. Inflation in the US is out of control. All economic indicators show signs of recession. But Fed still does not lower interest rates. More importantly, after the pandemic, America suddenly became empty. Offices and commercial space are empty. While interest rates are too high, property owners are no longer able to repay their loans. So the banks are holding a lot of bad debt. Having said that, do you understand what all that means? That means the conditions for malicious short selling are almost met. If you don't understand the big picture now, wait until the market really crashes before looking again. By then it was too late. Because this time the scenario is basically no different from before, just changing the bottle, but not the medicine. What does that mean? Meaning when God wants to destroy you, He will make you crazy first. Back then, when all of Southeast Asia was in a period of crazy development, China also made a lot of money and its assets skyrocketed. Everyone is crazy about speculating on assets. And that is also the time when the praise resistance is at its weakest. And Soros picked up his sniper rifle and fired 3 shots that ignited the crisis in Asia itself. The first shot was shorting the Thai stock market. Soros targeted major Thai banks and financial companies. He then ordered a sell-off of the stocks of these companies. At the same time, the world's most prestigious media outlets, even the Thai central bank, reported that Thai finance companies and home loan companies were facing serious problems. As a result, people panicked and rushed to banks and financial companies to withdraw money. So a series of defaults occurred and the Thai stock market collapsed immediately. The second shot is to see whether the Thai government will come to the rescue. Without rescue, Thailand's entire economy, stock market and all assets will collapse. At that time, SOS can take advantage of the low price to buy most of Thailand's assets will fall into Mr. Ta's hands. Then there's no need to even fire a third shot. If the government decides to step in to rescue, it will have to use the national treasury. And this is the opportunity to fire the third shot. At that time, the Thai government used hundreds of billions of US dollars to save this economic crisis, trying to stop Soros, but they are still unaware of the severity of the consequences. Soros immediately launched an attack ordering a short sale of the Thai baht, which means shorting the national currency of Thailand. Not only that, he also divided his troops into many directions, shorted a series of currencies across Southeast Asia, massively sold regional currencies and then switched to buying US dollars. Because he can confirm that when the Thai baht collapses, other currencies in the Southeast Asian region will also fall simultaneously. So he expanded the battlefield and launched a general attack on the entire region. All of Southeast Asia was caught up in the vortex. Indonesia, Philippines, Myanmar, Malaysia and many other countries are not spared from this blow. Everyone remembers the outcome. Soros won big and leisurely, walked away with a huge fortune. As for the whole of Southeast Asia, all the prosperity, assets and wealth accumulated over the years were robbed. The fixed exchange rate system was also forced to be abandoned. That means Soros' short-selling strategy consists of 3 shots, each closely linked to the other. The first shot is just to pave the way for the last shot. And now is that scenario repeating itself again in the previous videos I mentioned. You will realize that Buffett and the American capitalists have long been quietly withdrawing from the US market at the top position, leaving only a large amount of cash. So who owns US stocks now? Individual investors currently hold 30% of US stocks. US mutual funds hold about 50% of the shares. Therefore, many people believe that the majority of the US stock market is still in the hands of large financial institutions such as investment funds. But that's not the case, because 90 to 95% of shares in US mutual funds are held by individual investors. In other words, in the US stock market, 30% of individual investors choose to buy stocks directly, while about 40 to 50% of other individual investors choose to invest through funds. In addition, foreign investors are also holding about 10% of US stocks. All told, at least 70 to 80% of US stocks are in the hands of individual and foreign investors. So if the US stock market crashes, who will suffer? Is it capitalists like Buffett, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, who sold all their US stocks early and withdrew? In fact, the losers are individual investors and all the money from around the world pouring into the US stock market. So even if this disaster were to erupt in the United States, it would be similar to the 2008 financial crisis. Back then, capitalists still used government subsidies to borrow zero-interest money from the Federal Reserve to buy cheap American stocks. The losers are individual investors and the world. Why is Soros targeting Tesla for short selling? Many people think that it is a personal grudge, because Soros represents the EU and Elon Musk represents the US. That may be true, but it is only partly true. The deeper truth is that Tesla was not only a hot stock when Trump took office, but until last week Tesla accounted for nearly 5% of the Nasdaq index. It is also one of the few stocks in the AI space that can realize its potential. Because we can see technologies like autonomous driving, smart parking are clearly present. Because of that, Tesla attracts countless individual investors to buy shares. In terms of short-selling conditions, if Tesla collapses, it will not only cause investors to panic, sell in a crowd effect, but also bring down the entire US stock market and burst the AI bubble. More importantly, Elon Musk has also been selling his company's shares continuously recently. Combined with the tricks mentioned above, it is enough to satisfy all 3 factors of favorable time, favorable location and favorable people for a large-scale short sale. But what's scarier is that Tesla may just be getting started. Those who are still dreaming that holding for a long time will not lose probably do not realize that the numbers in their accounts are undergoing an unseen surgery. This world makes mistakes all the time, but many people are taught from the moment they enter school that they are not allowed to make mistakes. Their money is in pensions, in banks, in stocks, Even when the market crashes, banks fail, stocks bleed, they still teach their children not to make mistakes. So if they are not poor, who is poor? Children only learn to walk after falling. To become a pilot, the important thing is not whether you know how to fly a plane or not, but whether you know how to handle technical problems or not. Investing is the same. In a bull market, anyone who buys stocks with their eyes closed and holds them tight can also make a profit. But in a bear market downturn, the most important thing is to know the difference between a bull market and a bear market. Would you listen to the knife seller at the market? I tell you, in the stock market, whether you make money or not depends on how much potential you see. In a stock, what is important is whether the market has more money flowing in to buy or more money flowing out to sell. If the seller has stronger cash flow than the buyer, no matter how good the stock is, it will fall in price. In other words, the stock market rises or falls, depending on the big guys. So there is absolutely no need for us to look at financial statements or analyze the economy. We just need to follow the money of the big guys. The scariest thing is not that Soros wants to short US stocks, but that he is holding a trump card that is 100 times more terrifying. That was the final blow. If the past scenario plays out, the second shot that is about to be fired is to trigger a US liquidity crisis that will force the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Soros is best at forcing the central bank to open the valve for transferring assets themselves. What does it mean? As the US continues to face a crisis, many individual investors who bought mutual funds will hit their stop-loss thresholds, leading to automatic sell-offs. In 2020, US stocks plunged so much that they had to trigger a circuit breaker. For this reason, by then, ETF funds and investment funds that small investors bought into will be withdrawn en masse. And even those who trade less will flee. The result would be a complete collapse of the US market. At this point, FE has only two options. One is to stand by and watch the US continue to collapse and all the world's money will flow out of the US, causing the dollar to lose value. Second, action must be taken to either lower interest rates or print more money to inject liquidity into the market. And in most previous financial crises, the Fed has chosen to both cut interest rates and pump money at the same time. So look at how badly the US stock market has fallen right now. The Fed itself has predicted that the US economy will enter a recession, but they have remained adamant that they will not lower interest rates. Why so? The reason is simple. Lowering interest rates now has no effect anymore. You will notice that in recent years, FE has been continuously reporting losses. What is the reason? That's because they bought US government bonds a long time ago and the average interest rate they received from these bonds was only about 2.6%. But the interest rate they had to pay to banks in recent years has been up to 4.4%. So if FE lowers interest rates, will FE's interest costs decrease? Won't they lose again? But they still don't lower interest rates. Why so? Is it really because of inflation? You will realize the fact that the US Federal Reserve has started to lose control of the US dollar. In fact, in the past few months, the Fed has cut interest rates 3 times. According to Lee, if the US government bond interest rate is at 5% and the interest rate is lowered, most people will think that the interest rate will drop to 3% or lower. So it's only natural that people would rush to buy US government bonds to lock in this 5% yield, thereby driving up bond prices. But in fact, after the interest rate cut in September, bond prices fell again. That means fewer buyers of US bonds. In other words, when the market no longer listens to the talk, the interest rate cut trick is no longer effective. Currently, US bonds with such high interest rates cannot be sold. You can see the value of US government bonds has almost halved over the past few years. The US government treasury also does not have enough money to spend. If the Fed continues to deliberately lower interest rates, bond values will continue to plummet and a series of US banks holding bonds will go bankrupt. Therefore, at the present time, lowering interest rates may become the trigger for a crisis new finance. For that very reason, if the Fed wants to lower interest rates, they are forced to hold bonds, which means expanding their balance sheet and printing money to buy bonds themselves. In other words, if Fed chooses that solution, they can only print money. And once money is printed, the amount of dollars will increase dramatically and the dollar will immediately lose its value. Do you realize? Whether Faye saves or not, the end result is the same: the dollar loses value. At this point, Soros had already prepared the minefield. A third shot could help him profit from the dollar's fall. First, Soros could choose to short the dollar. But did he really do it? I'm not sure, because capitalists like him are dependent on America. Letting the dollar collapse is not necessarily in their interest. However, when the dollar depreciates, it is not necessary to short the dollar to make money. Because when money flows out of the US, it is very likely to flow into safe assets like gold. But in recent years, Soros has been buying gold in large quantities. By then, the gold he holds will skyrocket in value. And then you will realize that, coincidentally, Buffett's investment in the Japanese yen earlier will probably bring positive results. Because when the US stock market collapses, the money flow will likely return to Japan and push the yen up. Looking at the aftermath of the 2008 crisis, you'll see that gold prices rose 180% and the yen rose nearly 50% against the dollar. That's why I personally invested in gold last year and started moving to yen at the end of the year. Compared to most others, I have sold some US stocks. The rest is because I feel that the return from US stocks over the past year has been good enough and the dollar is at risk of losing value. So I have converted dollars into gold and Japanese yen for protection for investors or businessmen. We do not need to guess exactly when the US market will crash. The only thing we need to do is prepare for what is most likely to happen. And if that really happens, just having our name on the list of winners is enough. If this doesn't happen, we won't suffer a big loss. At most, we won't make a profit. In principle, Buffett is a big investor and we are small investors. So the way of playing and the plan will not be the same. But in reality, investment strategies have similarities. When the third shot rang out, a major transfer of wealth took place. Think about who the ultimate victim is. You may feel like this is irrelevant to you, but it's actually very simple. For example, Taiwan's labor insurance fund, Vietnam's sovereign wealth fund, Japan's pension fund and insurance funds in Europe have all invested heavily in the US stock market. At that time, these funds will be forced to cut losses and leave the market. After the 2008 financial crisis, global money was forced into safe assets, US bonds. So what about this time? There are not buyers for US bonds at the moment. But when the crisis happens, will there be buyers? At the same time, America will also have to repay its debt to the world. But as the dollar depreciates, this debt is actually eroded as well. Around 2008, America collapsed, but other countries collapsed even more miserably. Who won then? It was the capitalists, who had already placed their bets on the yen and gold. They can take profits at the top, then take the opportunity to buy assets globally at bargain prices. In addition, the US is also dumping domestic assets. When the crisis broke out, American banks were the first institutions to be bailed out by the government. They were not rescued at the beginning of the crisis, but only after the market collapsed. But once bailed out, American banks could use that money to buy up assets around the world at bargain prices. From Greek ports to South Korean banks. Meanwhile, financial corporations such as Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley not only did not weaken after the crisis, but also grew stronger and their monopoly also deepened. For Buffett, the period when his assets grew the fastest was when he started buying the bottom during the 2008 crisis. The key point of this video is that from now on, it doesn't matter which asset class will increase in price. The important thing is whether we hold in our hands must have assets like gold or not. Because what we really want to make is money to take advantage of when the third gun goes off. When global assets are sold off at low prices so we can buy in at bargain prices. I think the truth lies here. At last, George Soros is criticized by the world every time he attacks the market and short sells. But I want to say that, whether he is short selling or not, the fact is that the US stock market and US bonds are currently facing serious risks of collapse. And the risk of a financial crisis in the US is inevitable. This problem has always existed. Soros is just the one who triggered the crisis and is also just the one who suffered the consequences. When the market crashes, you see the Wall Street media start hyping up the Trump-caused recession. Then Elon Musk continuously fired employees, causing public discontent and the unemployment rate skyrocketed. Some people even blame the US Federal Reserve for not lowering interest rates. leading to the decline of U.S. stocks. But, as I said in previous videos, the collapse of the U.S. stock market is actually beneficial for the financial tycoons behind the Fed and even the U.S. government. So the problem is just finding someone to take responsibility. Soros has never cared about his reputation. He just makes money and then retires at the same time. If a short seller like him acts first, this will stimulate many others to follow suit, creating a stronger chain effect. So if collapse is inevitable and everyone wants to avoid responsibility, then even if Soros really sparked this crisis, he will just be a victim. I thought a lot about whether I should say these things or not. But in the end I decided to say them because I want you to realize one thing before the flow of capital. There is no such thing as good or bad people. It's just the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. The question is, which side do you want to be on, rich or poor? Will the upcoming events be as we predicted? How will we adjust our strategy? Due to time constraints, I will stop the video here. I share free knowledge on how to become rich, entrepreneur, investor and achieve financial freedom. If you don't want to miss it, subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell and share this video freely. I sincerely wish all of you who liked this video to achieve financial freedom soon. If in today's video you find 1 or 2 helpful quotes that help you live a better life, I'll be satisfied, mother.